Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the third annual Faith in the Marketplace conference. This year we're doing a webinar. When we started planning this event all the way back in January, none of us were expecting it to be a webinar. But when COVID-19 hit, our planning committee unanimously wanted to move forward with a virtual event and specifically address some of the obstacles that Christian businessmen and women are facing during the pandemic. So we're really excited about what we have lined up today. We have a great speaker this morning, Dr. Tim Haahs, and a great panel as well with some dynamic local business leaders, Maura Derstein, John Duerksen, and Ron Bergey. To start us off this morning, we have our very own Dr. Todd Mangum. Dr. Mangum is the Clemens Professor of Missional Theology at Missio Seminary. And Dr. Mangum takes that responsibility and that title very seriously. The Clemens Professorship was named after Les Clemens, who had such a profound impact on Missio Seminary and so many people in the business community. Dr. Mangum resides in Harleysville with his lovely wife, Linda, and she's a nurse at Abington Hospital who's been dealing and giving care to COVID-19 patients during this time. So, we applaud and thank our healthcare workers. Dr. Mangum has received 3 master's degrees from Missio Seminary, and he has a PhD from Dallas Seminary as well. He's one of our most esteemed professors. Dr. Mangum, will you please start us off this morning?
Thank you, Charles. It's great to be here. This is different, isn't it? It's very different from the country club where we were last year. I'm not saying that this isn't just as good. I'm just saying it's different. I missed the country club a bit, huh? Well, as I was thinking about this event and faith in the marketplace, my thoughts couldn't help but drift to the book of Joel. Now, I know if I could hear you all there, the room would fill with uproarious laughter at this point. That was supposed to be kind of funny. What does Joel have to do with us? Well, Joel's a little 3-chapter book and starts out with a pretty grim description of the circumstance that God's people are in. What the gnawing locust has left, the swarming locust has eaten. What the swarming locust has left, the creeping locust has eaten. What the creeping locust has left, the stripping locust has eaten. And describes the circumstance they're in either as literally or metaphorically. There's actually quite a bit of discussion, debate among biblical scholars about that, but as a wave of locusts, with each one taking another hit on the economy, on the comfort, on the safety and security of God's people at that time. I want to be clear. I'm not saying that we're the same as the theocratic nation of Israel, or that we are the same or in the situation of Joel. I'm not saying that. I'm saying it's a bit similar. It's just a bit similar. Doesn't it feel like our lives have, particularly in the year 2020, been disrupted by wave after wave of undermining our security kinds of events, challenges to our businesses, challenges to our livelihoods. And it can feel like, all right, just as we're over COVID, oh my goodness, there is this horrific murder, crossing racial lines at least, surfacing and displaying just how far our country, our culture still has to go in terms of race relations. And then, of course, with the not just protests, but some of the destructive riots taking a toll on businesses particularly in the city. Some of them innocent Black-owned businesses that in turn creates a disruption to the economy as well, wave after wave, it seems. Joel goes on to say, return to me, rend your heart and not your garments. It's a common theme in the prophets. Don't just wail, don't just cry, don't just plea. Rend your heart, return to me, redress the injustice. Part of what I love about the ministry of Missio Seminary is that last night I was on a panel. I mean, it was 7 o'clock, like now, only 7 o'clock p.m. last night. That panel was on courageous conversations on race. This morning it's faith in the marketplace. I suspect that the demographic of the audiences are probably just the reverse of one another. And yet they're related conversations. One of the panelists observed, again, as is almost inevitable in that conversation, Martin Luther King's observation now 50, 60 years ago, that the most segregated time in the week is 11 o'clock Sunday morning. Well, faith in the marketplace, as you and I well know, that the marketplace, engaging in business together, may be a place for Christian people attuned to the Spirit's work and kingdom values. That may be a place in which issues of injustice can be rectified. Issues of bias, prejudice, oppression can be addressed in ways that will hit the business community, or that can be engaged in the business community and marketplace first before the church. As a minister and a vocational Christian minister, I can wish it were the other way around. But part of what we recognize in our missional vision of Missio Seminary is that business, the marketplace, is not just ancillary to the mission of God. It is an aspect of the mission of God. So let me pray for you. Let me pray for us as we venture into a very good and rich day in which kingdom values and insights can be surfaced, raised, and engaged. Let's pray. Father, I thank you for each of the men and women that are part of this webinar, certainly on the panel, also those that are attending, tuning in over the channels of technology. And we thank you for the provision of being able to do this seminar in this format under such a trying time as this. And I pray, Father, that every word that's said, every idea that's engaged might be a fostering of your kingdom values. I pray, Father, that you might use this webinar, the speakers, to foster justice, that in pursuit and protection of profits, which the free market economy requires, that you would grant also, alongside pursuit of justice, that you might grant a troubling at injustice, that as each of these marketplace missionaries, these corporate business marketplace leaders cultivate, in some cases lead, set the pace for creating company culture, that you would allow kindness and fruit of the Spirit to be values ingrained in the cultures, corporate cultures that they cultivate. And I pray, Father, that you might use the ideas, the speakers, the principles engaged even in this webinar, to raise ideas and consciousness and motivation and courage for each person as each company that they represent pursues quality and competitive edge, which is necessary in a free market economy, that you would allow, in pursuit of that quality and competitive edge, a cognizance of your presence, an awareness that you, a holy God, are not only always with us, but always watching, that we might walk humbly with you. In Jesus' name, amen. And now it's my privilege and pleasure to introduce to you the president and CEO of my company, my nonprofit company, Missio Seminary, President Dr. Frank James.
Good morning, everyone. I trust you've had your coffee and you're ready to go for this day. We trust it will be a day where you are encouraged and blessed and even challenged. So thank you for joining our webinar this morning. We all know we're in a time of crisis. In fact, I have referred to it as a double crisis. For the last 10 or 12 weeks, many of us have been sheltering in place, telecommuting because of the COVID crisis. And we've experienced that. We're obsessively washing our hands and wearing our masks. But there's a second crisis of which we're all well aware and that Todd mentioned. And there are different ways to describe it, but I think it's at the very least a moral crisis of who we are, and especially who are we as followers of Christ. Racism is an ugly, unacceptable, anti-Christian outlook. We know in the New Testament that Jesus broke down the dividing walls between different cultures. And so we stand firmly in that tradition of breaking down dividing walls. Well, these crises that are overwhelming us in a way have impacted our economy. Just watch the stock market. Yesterday was not a good day. It's impacted our churches. We can't meet. We can't do funerals. It's just life is complicated. It's impacted our health, like you and your companies or at the seminary, at Missio Seminary. We've had folks who have contracted the virus. We have folks, people of color, who have felt really hurt by all the things that have happened of late. The death, the killing, the murder of George Floyd has really captivated us and our spirits. It has, we're troubled in our spirits. And everywhere I go, when I talk to people or mostly talk to people through Zoom, it's clear that we are troubled and our spirits are overwhelmed. I've been at Missio Seminary now 7 years. And this entire time, we have been on a quest to reimagine theological seminary for the 21st century. And I think these crises have certainly fast-tracked that quest. We are entering into the new normal, whatever that is. We're trying to deal with that as a seminary. And part of the quest to reimagine seminary includes faith in the marketplace. That has, from the outset, been part of the vision and thinking. We want to partner with you. We want to reimagine the relationship between theological seminary and the business community. We want to reimagine the community, the relationship between business, the church, and how we love our neighbors. My prayer is that Missio Seminary and the business community will forge a godly and powerful alliance in these troubled times to bring about economic change, social change, and spiritual transformation. Well, I talk about these things, and I talk about economics and business and spiritual transformation. One of the images that comes to my mind is the man I'm about to introduce, Tim Haahs. Tim knows a great deal about the intersection of faith and the marketplace, and he also knows a good bit about what it means to suffer a crisis. First time I met Tim, I went to his office out in Bluebell. And I'm sitting there talking to Tim. And as I'm listening, I'm noticing that there are two doors to his office. The door I came into to get to his office was through his business, Tim Haahs and Associates, an architectural engineering firm. But I noticed there was another door on the other side. And I said, Tim, what's that door to? Well, that's the door to the church that he founded, Calvary Vision Church. So this is a man who not only talks about integrating faith and the marketplace, he actually physically has integrated those. And his very office is that intersection point of faith and the business community. Let me tell you a little bit about Tim. Frankly, I could go on and on and on, but let me just give you a few highlights about the man who's going to speak to us. Tim was born in South Korea. And I think some of his earliest memories, certainly as we have talked, has been his father's ministry in a leper colony in South Korea. He has seen the tragedy of a health crisis up close. When Tim was 12, he immigrated to the United States, and he attended the University of Pennsylvania here, got his master's degree in civil and urban engineering, and he began to work his way up the corporate ladder. He had become the youngest principal at a national engineering firm. He was on the fast track, folks. And then, as he's on the fast track in 1992, he suddenly had a health crisis that required a heart transplant. Now, I'm not going to tell you that story. Tim will tell you more about that. But I tell you that just to let you know that Tim knows what a crisis is. In 1994, after his heart transplant, he founded Tim Haahs and Associates, an architectural and engineering firm here in Philadelphia. He's got offices in Miami and Atlanta and New Jersey. In 2006, he was selected by Ernst & Young as Entrepreneur of the Year in the category of real estate and construction. In 2012, he was the Delaware Valley Engineer of the Year. And then just a few years ago, he was appointed by the President of the United States to serve on the board of directors of the National Institute of Building and Sciences. Tim is also a published author. His first book, entitled P31, a reference to Proverbs 31, became a national bestseller in South Korea. He has been interviewed on television and news media over the years. It continues to have quite a significant ministry in South Korea. He was awarded an honorary doctorate by the top university in Korea, Seoul National University. And I'm happy to say that he is also a board member at Missio Seminary. He and I and a number of others, we collaborated on a marketplace missionary certificate in Korea that was located at a very large church in Seoul. And we were trying to educate people who were in the marketplace on how to share their faith, how to live their faith. We had, Todd was one of the professors, and we had over 1,000 certificate students in that program. It continues to run out of the church in Seoul, Korea. Tim is married to the wonderful and the beautiful Janice, who is also the CFO of Tim Haahs and Associates. And they have two lovely daughters, Christina and Juliana. I've had the privilege of meeting them both. Tim Haahs is a friend, a mentor, and above all, a brother in Christ. Won't you join me in welcoming my brother, my friend, Dr. Tim Haahs.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for the invitation to share. Well, it's actually maybe my story, but actually really is the story of Jesus. It's bright and early when Charles mentioned to the panelists and myself that we have to get on the Zoom by 6:30. And that meant I need to get up 5:45 latest, and it's ouch. Well, one thing I'm not is I'm not an early morning person. I just like to stay late into the evening to enjoy. And but 5:45, 6:30 has some different emotional sentiment for me. When I was in the hospital, waiting for the heart transplant surgery, that would have been about 27 years ago, I was in the hospital 6 months. That was a long period of time, 6 months. And 5:45, around that time, it's just like clockwork. Every morning, this phlebotomist will come and visit me and drew my blood. And the insert it's painful, and I dreaded it happening. But 6 months, every day, without fail, I had to deal with that. And followed by a dozen doctors, both the regular doctors and the intern doctors, coming and asking me all kinds of questions. Every day is the same question because of the intern students who want to know the background. Well, back then I was 33 years old. That's when my perspective in life changed. It changed quite a bit. I guess at that time, I was doing pretty well up until that the heart transplant hospitalization. As Frank mentioned, I was 28 years old when I became the youngest principal of a pretty large engineering architecture firm here in Philadelphia, nationwide. And as an engineer and architect, I'm licensed both. I was technically what you would call brick and mortar business. It's not the technologies we know today. It's just simple brick and mortar. I'm still working with the brick and mortar. And I know how to design buildings with the brick and mortar. But also, how I built my life was all using brick and mortar. Up till then, my life was going well for me. Using brick and mortar served me well. I was happy. I had lots to boast about my achievements, and I was ready to take on the industry and eager to go to the top position in my firm at that time. But in that moment, when I was in the hospital, the new perspective, everything changed. That would have been October 1992, when I was driving to see a client in New Jersey Turnpike. I just collapsed. I was doing probably like 75 miles an hour over the speed limit. Anyway, so when I got to the hospital, Basically, to make everything really short, they told me that I needed heart transplant if I were to live. And that was just completely and totally unbelievable, shocking. And right on the spot, without even asking me, maybe they did, they placed a pacemaker right on the spot. And then 2 weeks later, they performed a thoracic surgery, opening up my chest, and placing a soap-sized defibrillator in my belly and the wires sticking up to my heart. I lived with that for 1.5 years. And during that period of time, because I had a defibrillator built in my body, I was not even allowed to drive. So one day when I went to visit my doctor said, "Tim, you are not going home. You will be staying here until you have heart transplant." And as soon as I was admitted into an intensive care unit, I thought just the sky has fallen on me. Initially, I asked God, "Why are you doing this to me?" My father gave 13 years of his life to you by serving in a leper colony, and I was born and raised there. He gave his life to you. How could you do that to him, let alone me? How do you expect my father to bear watching his own son being tormented this way? Don't you have any mercy? And it lasts about 2-3 weeks in the hospital. It's just a form of questioning. Well, question is too gentle. A form of rebelling against God. Then when I realized that I really had no other option, doctors technically could not really help me other than heart transplant itself. Nobody around can help me. Then I realized God is the only one who can help me. So the first thing I did is, okay, if you're the God that I served all my life, and this is the time for you to really, really step into my life. And how am I going to do that? I decided to read the Bible cover to cover. Now, I never probably missed Sunday services all my life and attended most of Sunday schools, did all the voluntary work at church, but never read Bible cover to cover. So I made a determination in the hospital that I am going to read a Bible cover to cover. And I ended up actually reading in this 6 months time period 3 times. While I was reading, something really, really hit me. It's about brick and mortar. That's how I built my life. And that's my industry. We use brick and mortar to build buildings. And when I came to the words brick and mortar, really hit me, and I was really trying to understand the difference between brick and stone. Here's a scripture that I want to share with you this morning. In Genesis 11:3, this is about the Tower of Babel, a story that we all know very well. And it says in verse 3 of chapter 11, they said to each other, "Come, let's make bricks and bake them thoroughly." They used brick instead of stone and tar for mortar. And I was looking at this, and I had read this before, but never really hit me like it hit me at that time. Why is God comparing the two? What is the significance of this statement? Why is God emphasizing the word instead and trying to demonstrate the difference between the brick and stone? They use brick instead of stone, which means they're supposed to be using stone, but they use a brick. And I said, that's how I build my life. That's how I do my own business in the building. We use brick, concrete. And the next verse says, they said, "Come, let us build ourselves a city with a tower that can reach us to the heavens so that we may make a name for ourselves." That's what I really crumbled. I said, that's right. I did everything up to this point. Okay, I became a principal of the firm. Why did I do? What was the real hidden motivation behind it? It was really to make a name for myself. And then I went back to verse before that, brick instead of stone. I see. I'm using brick to build my life so that I can make a name for myself. And then we begin to try to understand the difference between the brick and the stone. What I found out is that brick is man-made. And it's because it's man-made, it is our ways, our methods. It's like 7 ways to be most successful or 5 ways. It's our ways, our methods, something that we came up with. Brick. I don't know if you know much about brick. Brick does not last that long. It only lasts 500 years, even if it's baked thoroughly. If you buy a cheap one, it can probably last 100 or 200 years. It only lasts 500 years to its maximum capacity. And then after that, it begins to deteriorate. By the time it's got back to the dirt, it's about double that, 1,000 years. You won't see any buildings that has brick that's over 1,000 years. And its brick is man-made technology of that time. Then I reflected on stone. And what is stone? Well, stone is God-made. We didn't make that stone. Because it's God-made, it's God's way. And one thing amazing about the stone is they last forever. It is the Word of God. Then as I was reading the entire Bible, you realize that our Lord has been referred in the Bible as rock of my strength. My rock, everlasting rock, rock of ages. This is where I realized that instead of glorifying the creator of heaven, I was working very hard to make a name for myself. And through my hospitalization, I realized God destroyed my Tower of Babel, just as he actually demolish the Tower of Babel to some 100 years ago. With that realization, I began to really seek new life and what will be like. And I made a determination without really understanding fully that I will build my life using stone instead of brick. And I wanted to live in God's way, not my own earthly understanding. So I asked God, how should I go about doing this? And as I was reading Bible, as I said, I was reading, cover to cover, and this Bible phrase kept repeating itself. I think in the New Testament, it comes out about 7 times. Basically, God again emphasized that the entire book, entire law and prophecy is summed up to this. And so, wow, God actually summarized everything for us. It's the only thing you need to know in terms of entire laws and prophecy in the Bible. There's so many hundreds of them. There's one thing that you need to know, and that is to love others as yourself. And I knew that phrase. I heard that hundreds of times. It didn't really hit me until I realized the difference between the brick and the stone. And that's when I decided that I'm going to make love others as yourself as the foundation, the rock on which I decide to build my company. So in 1994, from my home garage, my wife and I, we sat down and wrote down a company mission statement. We exist to help those who are in need. Really, it's another way of describing love others as yourself. Well, God just blessed the firm. Within 7 years, we became the fastest growing company in the Philadelphia area, and one of the most desired companies to work for, and many other things that Dr. Frank James mentioned. And God continued to give our firm so many testimonies. So the question then is, how did I build it? Well, it helps to read Bible cover to cover, and came across Proverbs 31, and I was so delighted. I just God gave me some insights that I have never understood before. The Proverbs 31 basically became the layers of stone that provide all the know-hows of running and managing a company. As you may know, the Proverbs 31 is about the woman of noble character. And we talk about it as a woman. And however, I decided to take on, this is not just for women, because when we are in Christ, Jesus is our groom and we're our bride. So therefore, it just applies to all mankind. It talks about in the Proverbs 31 from verse 10 through 31. I'm just going to pick few to demonstrate how I apply this to my office, either managing and operational wise. Proverbs 31, verse 11, for example, it says, "Her husband has full confidence in her and lacks nothing of value." The best way I can explain this to my staff is this. I said to them, if you have a hard time understanding what that means, just replace husband with clients or co-workers, saying our co-workers or my co-workers. My client has full confidence in me that I lack nothing of value. So we try to really instill in them respect others, so that if you have full confidence, and then our clients and co-workers will continue to respect. In verse 12 it says, never bring any harm. Verse 12, she brings him good, not harm, all the days of our life. So in our business practice, even if there are some clients who give you a hard time, we tolerate as Christ did, and as much as we can, and to bring him good. You know what? The great thing is when we tolerate and when we sacrifice, even our resources and don't make any profit on it, for some strange reason, 2-3 years later, when they have another project, they always seem to come back to us, and that's a blessing. Proverbs 31 also talks about how to invest in how to start a company. Verse 16 says, she considers a field and buys it out of her earnings. She plants a vineyard. And so when I was looking at this Bible verse, it's about to start my own company in hospital. So she considers a field, buys it, and out of her own earning, she plants a vineyard. And that's when I realized that if I'm going to start my business, basically it's saying that use your own money. At that time, I didn't have any money. So I started from my home garage, basically saying don't borrow money or ask money from your uncle or rich friends or things like that. Just use your own money. And that's how I built my firm out of the garage. I didn't have any money at that time. I didn't have money to buy a computer, which at that time cost $3,000. But that's how I started. Reflecting on the COVID, is this marketplace trying to address COVID as well. When we were hit with COVID, everybody heard about PPP. When I heard about it, and I thought that it only applies to companies that are really hurting, like restaurant business, who have to shut it down, or hair salons and places like that. This is what that applies. I just didn't even pay attention to it for a long time. And after a little while, people start saying, you got to go after PPP. PPP is why it's just, we're doing okay. We have a little setback. The revenue declined a little bit, but we still have to work. Everybody's employed. We're doing fine. Why do we need to get help? And no, it's something that everybody gets. You should get it. And I started looking into it. And I realized at that time, at least the first, as you may know, requirements, the condition for the forgiveness was not that favorable. It's only for 2.5 months. And so it wasn't really helpful for us. And we decided really not to pursue it. And that's because we decided not to pursue it because we committed to live by the marketplace our market, my company market, in terms of living up to verse 16. But that's my interpretation. It's a need basis. For my church, we have a daycare. We employ about 12 people. Well, they're totally out of work. So for our church, we did apply for PPP, and we did receive the funding. The Bible, Proverbs 31, also talks about what time to get up and how to dress. Verse 15 says, he gets up while it is still dark. And that's the one part I'm having trouble with. It's the hardest one for me, trying to get up, be ready by 6:30. It's a tough one. Verse 22 says, he makes covering for her bed. She's clothed in fine linen and purple. And I realized fine linen and purple, that's like what would be equivalent to today? That would be like formal wear, dress and attire. And when I started a company, we decided that we're going to go with a formal attire. And we still require our office guys to wear ties and shirts and things like that. But my staff been somewhat complaining, like, nobody does this anymore. It says, well, we're going to go with Proverbs 31, and she wore fine linen and purple. But I give you Friday break. You can be casual on Fridays, and summertime we can be casual. So that's the way we do it. So when this COVID happened, actually people were asking, wow, geez, I can work at home and just be totally casual. And we said, well, let's go back to verse 22 and said, and we're going to continue to dress up. So we just gave a requirement such as no pajamas. You need to have a decent clothes on, and you need to turn on video during our conference calls, and so that we can see what we're wearing. And so whenever we do the Zoom meetings or Microsoft Teams meetings, everybody's got to be turned on, so we can see it. No one's wearing pajamas. Just the point I'm trying to make is we're using Proverbs 31 as a sort of guideline for our management determination as to what to do, what to not to do. It also talks about how to make money and what to do with it. Verse 18 says, she sees that her tradings are profitable, profitable in terms of both resources and perhaps gaining knowledge. And so it's okay, we said, to make money. And verse 20 says, she opens her arms to the poor and extends her hands to the needy. She opens her arms to the poor and extends her hands to the needy. Well, that became our company mission statement, along with the love your neighbor as yourself. With this, that became our company mission statement. So when this COVID happened, our revenue went down, and we actually had to make some salary reduction in order to sustain. When we found out about a month and a half ago, almost 2 months ago, the masks were scarce. And then we heard about there was big shipment coming from overseas with the masks. So we purchased them, thousands of them, and we offered to local hospitals. But no matter how difficult it is, when there is need, we try to live by it. That's our focus. It also talks about what to do when the storm comes. Verse 21 says, when it snows, she has no fear for her household. And so what it meant for me at that time when I was reading this, trying to really understand the inside, is to make sure your company have enough reserve, so when the storm comes, that you can continue to sustain your business. And we have done that. Even during 12 years of recession, we had so much reserve, so we didn't have to lay anybody off during that period of time. When an average engineering architecture firm laid off 40 to 60%, we did not have to lay anybody off. And that's really our testimony. It's not about bragging about firm, but it's about true testimony. When you really live by God in faith, God actually provides. And I really try to instill in my staff, when you live by faith, there's always reward. God will deliver his promise. He also talks about how to manage people. into how to manage your finance. And verse 27, it's so clear. She watches over the affairs of her household, and she does not eat the bread of idleness. The bread of idleness. That basically means don't take any easy money. That's one of the reasons, another reason why I initially decided not to pursue PPP, because I just felt that it was easy money, and at the same time, it was not that favorable initially. But now it is. I mean, now a couple of weeks ago, they changed the law, the regulation that you could use it to apply for almost 6 months. Now all of a sudden it's favorable, but it's too late for us. We're not going to go back to reapply again. As I said, but our daycare in the church, we did apply because it was need basis. Another testimony pertaining to that is that when we decided not to pursue, when my middle management continued to ask me, should we pursue because it's money is there, should we pursue? And I wanted to pursue so much. And I said to the folks, listen, if we receive money, how are we going to experience the presence of God, the hand of our God in our workplace? And I just feel that if we give this one up, and God's going to give us a testimony. And that's what we should be seeking, as we have done years and years past within the 27 years of a company. So let's just stick with the same, even though it's very tempting. And there's nothing wrong with taking the money, because most of the companies have done it. There's nothing wrong with it. But for us, we made a commitment with the Promise 31, stick with it. And I'm happy to announce about 3-4 days ago, our staff, we did it, the revenue forecast, and we found out that we are going to be very busy entire summer and the coming September, the fall time as well. So that's really the promise that God is delivering. And verse 31 talks about the word, and God promised reward if we abide by His word. And the third one says, give her the reward she has earned, and let her works bring her praise at the city gate. And so I have experienced again and again God's reward. We continue to live by His words. And then in that Proverbs 31, there's just so many, just everything that you really need to run, how to run a business is all in Proverbs 31. So finally, let me finish with my story, reward, if you will, but it's also a testimony, a story of Jesus. After being in hospital for 5 months, which was 27, 28 years ago, I was getting very, very critical. I was getting weak and weak. I knew at the time my chance of survival was very low. And later on, my doctor confirmed that time to them, you actually had 0 chance of survival if the heart did not show up at the nick of time. Then at the nick of time, the new heart became available. And I was so happy and thrilled. And it was a perfect and healthy young heart. And the doctor told me to get ready tonight. We're going to do the surgery. As he was wrapping up his visitation with me, and he kind of, in passing, told me something about what is going on that hospital floor. Told me about there is a young girl next door. She came to the hospital by helicopter about 3 days ago, and we did the evaluation. We found out that for her, if she does not get a new heart, she's going to die in 2 days. You know, it was like saying, well, that's really too bad. I mean, I waited 5 months. And then as doctor said something, I wish he didn't say it at that time. He said, well, she has the same blood as you, Tim, meaning that the heart that I'm receiving is good for her as well. So I wasn't really in shock. I don't know why I need to be shocked. Maybe I was thought in the doctor looked at me and says, look, Tim, don't worry, this is your heart. Maybe he thought that I was thinking that if I was, that they want to take the heart and keep the heart instead. So I asked her, doctor, are you really sure that she's going to die in 2 days? She says, yeah, in her case, definitely. And I said to ask doctor, then in my case, how long do I have to live? Guess what? He told me 7 days. 7 days. But in your case, we might be able to prolong it for another 2-3 weeks. After surgery, asked him, what did you mean by 2-3 years? Well, that means we were going to give you morphine. You know what that means. And during that period of time, my doctor was explaining to me about how I only have 7 days. I had 7 days and she had 2 days. The Bible verse just popped in my head, and that was love others as yourself. And when I was in the Bible and I was reading that particular phrase, love yourself as yourself, what does as yourself meaning? And it was very clear to me, love others sacrificially, sacrifice for others. And this is the phrase that Jesus said a few days before his crucifixion. So Jesus really meant if you really love others, you need to be able to sacrifice others. And at that time, I decided to give the heart that I was supposed to receive today to her. And the doctor didn't want to do it, but I insisted and I insisted. So the heart went to her and she lived, and she still lives. And exactly 7 days later, I became conscious just like her. And then a few weeks later, there was another heart available. It was a marginal heart. It was not a very healthy heart, but I received that as my first heart transplant surgery. And because perhaps it was marginal heart, 6 years later, I had to go into the hospital for another 5-6 months and had a second heart transplant. And that time was a good heart. It was a very good heart, and I was thankful. And then my doctor told me, Tim, you need to take care of this heart very well. Because first of all, no, Tim, you don't understand. This is it. You're not going to have any third chance. Meaning that the regulation is that you can only have a 2 heart transplant in a lifetime. You cannot have a 3 heart transplant because there are so many people waiting in the hospital. They die. 50% of people die while waiting. It's not fair for one person to have a 3 heart transplant. So this is it. So take care of it. So I lived my life. I ran my operations, my business, and realizing that was my last chance. I'm not going to get another chance. Well, about 5 years ago, I had a tightness in my chest. So I went to see my doctor, and he told me, and he was surprised that the main artery, he said it was about halfway blocked. And I was once again somewhat disappointed, but at the same time, I know that I lived another 20 years with my second heart transplant. That's blessing itself. But here's the real testimony that I want to share with you. It's about God promises reward, promises reward when you abide by His words. The doctor continued to explain to me at the time, Tim, the only way you could, if this second heart is no good, the only way for you to live is that you need another heart transplant. And I was somewhat saddened because it's not my option for me. And he says to me, Tim, because you sacrificed a good heart on your first heart transplant surgery, and the one that you received was marginal heart, even though you had 2 heart transplant surgeries, but you only had 1 good heart. Therefore, they are making exception for you to have a 3rd heart transplant if you need it. When doctor told me, I was literally in tears. God rewards. And that's really my testimony. Each and every time God came through, and you live, of course, with His word. And I said earlier, during this COVID time, when I decided, even though I could, not to take a PPP, just a month or so later, which I received the news 2-3 days ago, we have received a few more large size projects, and that revenue potential revenue or billing is continued to increase, and that's just a blessing. So I just want to share my life story as to I try to live by the word of God in the marketplace. So I just want to encourage you, and thank you for listening to the story of Jesus through my testimony of using stone to build our business and career, not with man-made brick. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Tim. I've heard you speak several times, and I'm always so encouraged and inspired by your life, the way you follow Jesus, and the way you conduct your business. So thank you so much. To close out the day later on this morning, we'll have an open Q&A session where you could type in some questions for Tim and our upcoming panelists. So please type them in. The Q&A box is located at the bottom of your Zoom screen. It should be in the center. Next up, we have our panel discussion, and I'm honored to introduce three dynamic business leaders from the Souderton area. We have Maura Derstein, who is the Director of Experience at Locker. She's been a team member at Locker for over 23 years, and she has a passion for developing and leading people. And she also has a passion for helping her clients grow. Maura is a devout wife and a proud mother of two sons, one of which just graduated from Doc and is attending my alma mater, Messiah College, in the fall. We also have John Duerksen, who is the Executive Vice President of Commercial Banking at Univest Bank and Trust. He's been at Univest for 29 years, and he's actively involved in his church, Blooming Glen Mennonite Church, and the community. John and his family live in Souderton. And last but not least, we have Ron Bergey, who's the CEO of Bergey's Electric. This week, Ron celebrated his 30th wedding anniversary with his wife, Becky. Congratulations, Ron and Becky. They are proud parents of 3 adult children. They are third-generation business owners, and they have a passion for Jesus and seeing him move through the business community. So thank you so much for being with us this morning. For the panel discussion, I'm going to start off with you, Ron. Right now, during the pandemic, so many things have changed. A lot of things have changed in just so many different levels. But one of the major things is that this pandemic has brought forth a need to be resilient and adaptable. How has Bergey's Electric adapted and been resilient through this pandemic?
Okay, yeah, we certainly didn't even have a choice. You were going to adapt, or you were forced to do that. I was amazed how our 2020 goals for the year, from expansion and profitability, downgraded to survival mode in a matter of a couple of weeks. It was like drastic. For us, significant is new construction and our retail store. So both of those were deemed as non-essential businesses. So we were pretty much forced to, this 80-year-old company that never laid off anybody, or other than a few at one in the 80s crisis. We were forced to lay off 50 plus employees, which was significant. Not something that we wanted to ever do, but that's where we found ourselves in that situation. So Robert and my brother Robert and the HR team were busy trying to understand the CDC requirements, what we do about unemployment. That was all new, like I said. Lots of Zoom meetings, webinars, conversation with other business owners on what they were doing, trying to understand what other companies were doing so we weren't out of alignment. Like I said, the changes were not voluntary. So, but one thing, all in this together, I've heard that before, seen in print, but yeah, amazed how the employees and the customers were willing to be flexible, and heard very little resistance about changes that we were forced to make, and people just did our best to accommodate. We did some essential work. Our store was closed, but we were helping customers that came in if they needed for repairs. So we were doing some, but most of our work was not deemed essential, as well as the lights were off in the store up till this past week. So
That's a lot to change and adapt to. Is there a specific reason or anything you could point to on why you think the employees adapted so well and worked so well with the leadership team and the HR team with all the changes that had to happen?
I think everybody knew this is a serious event, and so yeah, well, it's a new day. It's a new normal. Yeah, we're wearing masks. We're doing things a lot differently, and we weren't the only ones. It was everybody in the same boat. So
yeah, and I'm sure also the culture and the care of the leadership team probably contributed to that as well. So yeah, thanks a lot, Ron.
Customers and good business, good employees. Yeah.
That's great. Maura, at Locker, you work with a lot of business owners, a lot of business leaders. What are some of the ways that you have seen or that your clients are dealing with the stress and fears of their employees or even their customers?
Thanks, Charles. It was really interesting right when COVID initially hit, how the disruption took place, the conversations and the ways that we were resourcing our clients, which are primarily business owners. I would say it was very much a holistic approach. So a lot of businesses were thinking about the financial well-being of their team members, the mental well-being, physical, emotional, spiritual. So it was a really interesting time from our seat, because our goal is to help the client grow, right? And so for us, that can take many different forms and faces. And so it was really interesting at times on the different strategies that we were discussing, whether it was how a healthcare plan can still respond and support, how from an income replacement perspective, from PPP funds, and John at Univest actually helped us out with counseling and coaching our clients on that. It was so interesting and encouraging to see the deep care and community that our clients have for their team members. That it made it so enriching and rewarding actually to be able to have a seat at that table and help them develop that strategy during that time. And now I would say, as we're sort of 10 to 12 weeks, depending on when companies sort of made the move, it's almost that cycle's coming again, right? Because now you have re-entry and re-engagement and you're ramping up your percentages higher and higher, you're facing some of those situations with your team members, from anxiety, fear, what is this going to look like on a day-to-day? In Ron's case, I'm going to customers' homes, job sites, all of those things. It's sort of a rewind and understanding our role and actually the employer's role of just having deep empathy, care. And I think flexibility and adaptability are the words of the year. All of us, and being really open to change and to do things differently. And I think that's been really encouraging, just being in this community and seeing that.
Yeah, that's fantastic. There's just so many questions and so many unknowns with the pandemic. Business owners, us at the seminary, we're, constantly trying to assess and make adjustments. So yeah, thanks a lot. Very helpful. John, the banking industry has had a lot more work placed on it because of the payroll protection program. I know a lot of people, yourself included, in the banking industry are working a lot more hours per week. During this time, it seems there's a lot more stress, a lot more pressure, a lot more things going on. Has there been anything new, any new things that God has shown you about your work, your faith, or your family during this time, during the pandemic?
Yeah, thank you, Charles. I'd say the biggest new thing that God has shown me is not necessarily new, but it's a real reminder that He's in control. We need to rely on Him, and as Tim mentioned in his talk, He provides, and it's true. And I don't think it's any real coincidence necessarily that this all started during the Lenten season as well, a time, this challenging time. But it was really, you know, as this still plays out, I just was reflecting as I was preparing for today on how things developed, and it really developed so fast, at work, at home, everything. So I remember in February, as a business, we were preparing for, you know, what if this came to the U.S. and we all needed to work from home. So the entire organization planned for that, and we were all responsible to put together our plans. And then when that day came, it was really something to, you know, this is real. And so fortunately, everybody really pulled together, and was able to work remotely, working 7 days a week, all hours, just to make sure that we're able to work together, work with our customers, and help out in this crazy, unprecedented time. And it went from, you know, the shutdown that where business owners didn't know, you know, what is going to happen the next day, and still to this day there's questions out there. So we had businesses that were completely shut down and needed help as far as deferring payments, and then the PPP program. I mean, that was learning as you go, and so every step forward that you took was a new path. We were blazing a new trail because there were always more questions than answers. So and going through the Triple P application process, the application changed, the rules changed. I mean, every day there was a new update. And so not having answers for business owners and customers all the time was challenging. But and also on one telephone call, you'd have someone who we were able to get the approval put in place for the Triple P loan to help their business survive. And the next phone call that I'm on is someone who we hadn't gotten the application processed yet. And so they're really struggling. So the whole, you know, one person is, singing our praises. The other one is saying, hey, what's going on over there? But the good news is we were able to get through all of our applications and get through it all. But my point is that it just took, at work, the new things was showed just the importance of patience, flexibility, compassion, having faith, and also the importance of deliberate communication and encouragement. With the family, all of a sudden, my son, who was at Messiah College, freshman there, all of a sudden he was only there for 2 months, and he had to come home, and Sheila and I were thrilled. He had to come home and finish his freshman year online. My daughter at high school here at Doc, she came home and finished online, and so all of a sudden the house and the family, that all changed, and so that was, and we had to have a real commitment to, you know, staying home for our own health, but also for the health of the rest of our family and friends and the community. And that was really neat. I would say, even though we were all at work, and we were all and with customers, we couldn't see each other, be with each other. One of the really neat blessings that I saw was that even though we were far apart, this all brought everyone together. The commitment to health, the commitment to trying to find ways to survive and remain strong, even though there's more questions than answers. With having to be more deliberate with communication, as far as having WebExes for my team meetings and reaching out to each of my employees one-on-one, reaching out to customers, some customers just reaching out to me. Ironically, I just felt like that really brought everyone together. And that's my biggest encouragement right now, is how God has shown how everyone is just, even if there aren't answers to all the questions. People are really resolved and resilient to go after the greater good, and so he is faithful, and he will provide.
Great. Thanks so much, John. Thanks so much. Great answers. You talked about the uncertainty and the unknowns, and just juggling so many different things. And I know during this time, people take those things a lot of different ways. Sometimes people are encouraged. Sometimes they have fears, and especially working with different businesses and different employees as well. So Ron, how have you and the other owners at Bergey's Electric kind of juggled these different unknowns, the different personalities of your employees, perhaps some of their fears and the different desires? I know some companies that have a lot of different employees, some people are itching to go back to work and you can't wait till things start up again. But as Maura and John talked about, some people are scared about contracting it for health reasons. They're, at risk. So, what have you guys learned about communicating with your employees and kind of navigating the range of emotions of people?
Yeah. First, on the issue of anxiety, in the beginning of this event, the pandemic, there was not much good news. You watched the news and it was pretty depressing. It was amazing. And so stress and anxiety levels were super high. So what we did as a company, before the government even figured out what they were doing, we said everybody gets an extra week of vacation, just to kind of try to calm the nerves, and something we felt like we should do. And so then that helped a little. It wasn't long before most everybody then was on unemployment. So then the next concern is, well, what about our health insurance? So yeah, we're talking a lot, and what's going to happen here with this. We extended then the health insurance coverage for even those that were on unemployment through the month of April. And then fortunately, most of us, or actually all of us, were back working then in May. So that kind of took some of the anxiety away, hopefully. So did what we could. We also, as we were calling people back, we were doing our best to listen to their concerns. Some people had maybe younger people still living with older people in the household. So what about, they didn't want to bring something back to those. So tried to do the best we could to listen and make accommodations. People working from home, people working after hours, we offered that. If you didn't want to come into the office and still needed to be getting something done physically in the office, so they could come after, there was some of that. So the question about communication, then, most people, I've often said, you can't over communicate. I've heard that phrase often, but most people would say I probably don't communicate enough. So one thing that we've used to help connect would be the WhatsApp. Was a tool that was kind of helpful. You can broadcast, make announcements, but people can reply, but it's not replying to the whole group. So that's a tool that has worked well. We were regularly just trying to keep people updated through that tool. But the most encouraging thing through this whole thing, you asked about people nervous about coming back. I was really encouraged and glad to see that seemingly everybody was happy to come back to work, and very little bit of, no, I don't want to come back. There was people that were saying, well, I probably make more money staying at home because of the unemployment, but still a great attitude. And we're all back working again, and I don't know, what's the next wave, what else is coming about here, but just to see a working family functioning together as a family, working together is really encouraging. Feeling blessed as a company, for sure.
Yeah, that's fantastic, Ron. And definitely sounds like, that principle, that biblical call from God to treat others as we want to be treated, love others, is love our neighbors as ourselves, you guys have implemented and try to implement as well with the extra vacation week and managing those concerns and fears. So that's fantastic. Thanks a lot. Maura, we've talked about stress and uncertainty during this time. People are cooped up as well and just trying to deal with the current situation. A lot of Christians have found it difficult to find opportunities to glorify God during this time as well. So kind of have a two-part question for you. First, what are some of the things that you've been doing or you've been able to find to glorify God during this time? And then secondly, related to glorifying God and loving others is we're going to love ourselves. Have you changed anything at work about the way you care for employees or coworkers?
So with the first question was, how have my behaviors or disciplines changed? I have a challenge with being still. So I actually have be still and know that I am God in my office, because that is a challenge for me. And this has been a great exercise. And I really did challenge myself even at the onset of this is a great opportunity to work on my stillness. And by that, I would say not only personally spending more time trying to meditate, clear my mind, really have purposeful prayer time that I'm only thinking about the person or the situation. So being still was a great challenge opportunity for me. And by doing that, it really opened up my eyes of, I'll use the word connection, and reaching out to people that may be in my normal hustle and bustle of every day. I don't, or I always have the best intentions and don't take that step. And so I've had more conversations with my neighbors recently than I've probably had in the last 3 years, which was really cool and fun to be able to make that connection. Friends that I haven't spoke to. I grew up in the Pittsburgh area, so I have some dear friends back there that touch base every once in a while, but not frequently. People at church. So it really gave me the opportunity to say, okay, how can I connect? And then the second half of it is, how can I express empathy? So working on my emotional intelligence was really important during COVID, and empathy would not naturally be one of my greatest strengths. So really having that time, whether it's COVID or what we're going through now with all of the civil unrest, the Lord has really shown me more and more that empathy, putting yourself in other people's shoes, is so vital for me, for our community, and for us to be able to be that light to people that we interact with on a daily basis. So stillness, empathy, trying to rest my mind were some ways that I would say I've improved. Definitely have not arrived during this. Your second question, Charles, I think was on how are we relating or how am I relating differently to our team members that I get the opportunity to serve on a daily basis. Definitely empathy and sort of going through that cycle again, right? Because we're working on our reentry plan to our physical space. We never shut down. We were considered essential, which is a blessing, but we physically have not been together. And so we're sort of going through some of those conversations again. So being empathetic, really actively listening and not always fixing. And so just being that listening ear, giving people time to speak. And it's been really neat to get to know people in different ways that I wouldn't have been able to have gotten to know them, whether it's their husband Zoom bombing, when we're having a meeting and walking by, or Ace the cat jumping up on Greg's lap, or whatever it is. It's been really fun to be able to have that connection point and see everybody in their own element and sort of bring the humanness, because when we're in our normal day to day, we're all running, right? We're all moving fast. And while we do the stop and chat and check up on the weekend, I don't usually talk about Ace the cat or what did you have for dinner last night and send me a picture of it. So it's been really fun to be able to connect and have some deep connections that I don't want to lose. I really don't want us to lose as we start re-entering. So.
Great, that's fantastic. Fun stuff. We were on a Zoom call not too long ago with one of my colleagues at the seminary, and his son walked by with no shirt on in the background. So that was funny. I got bombed by his teenage son. John, you covered a lot with your last question, and the pandemic has impacted so many aspects of society, all across society, work and personal things as well. How has it kind of impacted your family versus your work? And then also, how have some things shifted, maybe communication with employees, or, there's other dynamics as well of, being all together again as well. So, kind of how has the pandemic impacted one versus the other?
Sure. Thank you, Charles. Yeah, fortunately, from a family standpoint, no one in my family at home or a little extended family that ended up contracting the COVID virus. And so we were fortunate enough to be able to be healthy. And also, I certainly, as far as work goes, there wasn't any impact to my job, losing job or losing hours or anything like that, because we've been, busy as ever and declared an essential business. So really, and grateful for that, and don't take any of that for granted. But as I mentioned earlier, with as far as the family goes, it changes. Sheila and I, in one of the bright spots of this has been having our kids trapped at home with us. So we've been able to have some great family time together, some great conversations, and that has been really wonderful for my children, for Sheila and I, being able to connect with friends. And we had to be much more deliberate for sure as far as the communication goes, and staying in touch, whether it was Zoom or telephone calls or emails, just to check in. There's gaps there that had to be filled with being intentional with our family. One of the challenges, I think, for me especially, was just honoring the Sabbath, especially in the PPP program is still going on with, now we're going into the forgiveness phase, but especially with Triple P loan program in the beginnings, just being able to tell one day from the next, and being able to make sure we're taking time for the family, taking time for a way to honor the Sabbath in some way, was something that had to be intentional. And it definitely impacted my life as far as especially prayer goes. I normally have a daily devotional and prayer, but the reliance and the importance of prayer really stood out, and is a whole new importance for me and my family. As far as business goes, it really has impacted, almost every aspect of how we do business. Normal times when I meet with customers to sign loan documents, or I sign off on approvals for employees for loans, or how we communicate, have team meetings. It all impacted that. And also just to check in with employees. Everybody has different situations at their homes. Some people are by themselves, some people have a big family, or some people have a young family, so knowing the stresses that this creates, and just trying to make sure that I'm touching base with employees, also just touching base with customers, and being very deliberate with that. One of the things that I learned, LeaderCast happened during this time as well, and one of the speakers in LeaderCast, I think it was the opening speaker, just talked about how important it was, not necessarily what you said, but that your voice was heard, and that I won't ever forget that. I think that was great counsel, great advice, and I know how much I appreciate that during a time of the unknowns. So One of the things I will say though is that it's been neat, whether it's employees, but also talk about family versus business. I really appreciated my family and their support. My wife Sheila and my kids, all of them really showed a lot of support. They understood. They asked me questions about why I was so busy and what I was doing, and to understand the importance of the PPP loan program, of getting money into the local economy for businesses to survive, and for these business owners to whether or not they're laying employees off or not laying employees off, and that the importance of this bloodline of money to help the local economies and people survive and be able to sleep at night and buy their own groceries and everything. I really appreciated the support of my family during that time as well.
Great. Thanks so much, John. So to close out, we're going to have a couple field 1 or 2 questions with the panelists and Tim, and then Missio's president, Frank James, will close us out for this morning. So the first question I have is for you, Ron. Has the pandemic changed your perspective at all, or helped you grow in your faith at all?
The answer definitely would be yes to that question. What is an idol? Anything that gets in the way of God being number one in our life. And yeah, there's certainly, I get excited about projects. I get excited about brick and mortar and trim and paint, and also like to work. You get in this routine of being busy, and so that almost can become an idol in itself. Quickly, in God we trust. Those words always ring true to, okay, what do we really trust in when everything's falling away? Is it God that we're really trusting in, or is it our money, our ability to work? Just had to reevaluate all those things. A scripture verse quickly that I just kept thinking has something to do with this pandemic. Psalms 139. Search me, God, and know my heart. Test me and know my anxious thoughts. See if there's any offensive way in me, and lead me in the way everlasting. And so possibly was this pandemic in a way to test us, to see our anxious thoughts. And in the hard times is when we typically grow. It's not the easy, it's the hard that makes us better people. And so let's all continue to evaluate what's important. 2 other words, eternal significance. Often think about that as okay, what I'm all worked up about or putting all this energy in, does it have anything to do with eternity?
It's a great word. It's a great word. Maura, what about for you? Has the pandemic done anything to change your perspective, or either in business or faith, perhaps some other applications that you?
Yeah, I've always been, I would consider myself a very hopeful person by nature. But this was another great reminder, similar to what Ron said, to take a step back, to be peaceful and understand that this isn't anything that we can control, that God is in control, that we just need to focus on Him. Even when it's very easy to get anxious, or it's very easy to think about all of the things that can go wrong. And, I'm in the risk management business, so it's sort of funny that I'm so optimistic and hopeful because what do we do all day? We think about all the things that can go wrong and how can we solve those or mitigate them. And so for me, I think it was a matter of just stepping back, being calm, and really working. And the Lord showed up in some big ways and moments when it was easy to say, all right, we might have to make some really tough decisions that I've never had to face before in my career. And I don't even like thinking about that. But God was good. He showed up in a big way, not only for me, for our entire leadership team. And it was amazing to see how when somebody was down, somebody was having a good day. And when somebody was, and then it was given back to you. And I just remember a call I received from a colleague. I was in a meeting and I got a text and she said, I need to talk to somebody right away. And it sounded very, very urgent. She was actually having an anxiety attack that she's never had before. And while that was very scary to see her with that and help talk her through it, I was so honored that she thought to call me, and she never did that before. That was the first time that she ever reached out to me for a situation like that. And I just praise God over that he could use me in that way, that I was having a good day and able to be calm and hopeful and empathetic. So yeah, God has been good. He will continue to be good, whether it's through this or the other challenges that we're facing. And yeah, I just think we need to keep focused on him and be hopeful.
Great, thanks a lot. We have another question that's a little bit more business related. Tim, what is going to permanently change about your business or your industry after the pandemic? For example, what are you going to do about employees that want to work from home from now on, or work from home more often?
Yeah, that's the real question for our industry. We're basically mostly office work. We don't have to be in a restaurant serving people, so it is more open to actually working from home, and that's one reason why we were able to retain and sustain during this period of time. But even though if I talked about love your neighbor just as yourself, meaning that you need to really pour the caring and listening, and also the applying the empathy. It's really God's way, and I think it's really good, and we do that as much as we can. But the Bible is also clear: be gentle as dove, but also at the same time wise as serpent. So how do we apply this being wise as serpent? Well, we'll have to deal with the empathy and just listening to our employees and giving them all their wish list. So the permanent, we don't. Well, the only thing, the permanent is the word of God. It's the stone. And so one of the big issue right now in our industry is everybody's asking this question as we're coming back, is like, can we permanently now work from home? So how do you answer that question? And so, I actually did a survey with our staff, and I also received the survey from our industry. They also did the survey. I didn't know what they were doing. I just found out about it. So you ask the question saying to the staff member, not the supervisors, the staff members. So how effective and productive was working from home? Well, 75% of them said 100%. The other 25% said better than 100%. Then you ask the same question to the project managers, the supervisors, and principals. The answer is just the opposite. 75% says less than 100%. The other 25%, it's less than 75%. So the question that I'm not so much a question that I'm addressing to our staff is that we will continue to look at the empathy, we'll continue to look at your needs. Psychologically, if you're very uncomfortable coming to work, we'll deal with that separately, but we're not going to make any permanent policies for everybody. We just felt that work from is not an option for us in our industry. It's actually privileged, and the work from home has to be earned with past performance. And so these are the ways in which we're trying to accommodate. At the same time, because in business, we have to survive. It's competitive out there. So we have to look at what we are doing, applying empathy. At the same time that we teach our folks, which I'm trying, is that we need to think about effectiveness, productivity, and competitiveness. It's going to continue to be very competitive. And if we're not very productive working from home, and we need to add another hundreds hours, 500 hours, 1,000 hours to finish a project, because that's not as effective, productive, even though they think they are, and then we're going to just lose out the projects in our proposals that we submit to do the design. And so that's kind of balance we're doing. So the way we're leaning is it's working from home will be a limited basis. It's not an option, but it's a privilege. And you need to continue to demonstrate that you can meet all the requirements. So you have to earn it. Just like the Proverbs 31, she used her own earned money to start a business. You have to earn it. So this is the way in which we're going to go about answering this big question right now about working from home.
Thanks a lot, Tim. John, final question. Same thing to you. Is anything going to permanently change about in the banking industry because of COVID and everything that's going on?
Oh, I'm sure. I mean, it's really forced all of us to embrace new technology, new ways to communicate, even new ways to sign, like I mentioned earlier, signing documents and how to do things. So I think it's going to impact a lot of ways. Also, this coming through this, it's not going to be a all of a sudden everything's back to normal type of thing. I think we've all come to that conclusion, and so for a lot of our customers, it seems like things are coming back pretty well, pretty quickly. But for those that are in any sort of industry that are continuing to be shut down or are impacted by having to implement all these safety measures and additional costs for the PPE and everything, it's going to take a while. So we're going to have to be flexible and try to find ways to help customers get through this, because it's not going to be a, hey, we're back up and running in 3 months type of thing. For some folks, it's going to take a couple, 3 years to try to get out of this. So this story is still being written for sure.
Yeah, that's for sure. Thank you so much. Greatly appreciated having you all this morning. Greatly appreciate your participation. I know each one of you is juggling so many different things, and I've really enjoyed hearing about how God is working in your life and helping you lead your business during this time. So thank you so much. And Monsieur's President, Dr. Frank James is going to close us out this morning.
Yeah, I just was reflecting about Maura's comment about Zoom bombing. Some of you know my wife is a writer and an activist for women and girls, and she was on a video call a few days ago. It just so happens our two granddaughters are here, and while she was in the middle of a Zoom meeting with a professor back in Oregon, our youngest granddaughter, 4-year-old, yelled out, "Mommy, Nyla, I went poopy." And so that the world has changed. We're all sort of more vulnerable and more human. I think that's the word more used. And maybe that's a good thing. Maybe that's a very good thing. First, let me thank Tim. Tim, thank you for sharing your heart with us, literally. Grateful for that. Maura, Ron, and John, you are all very dear to us at Missio. I appreciate each of you for your insights, your professionalism, but also your hearts as well. A special thanks to Wendy. Wendy is behind the scenes. Grateful for you, Wendy, for all your help. And for Charles, thanks for organizing and being the point person on this. I don't know quite what we do without you, brother. We are very grateful for you. And for Todd, I think we all just love you, brother. We appreciate your engaging style, your sense of humor, and your wisdom. So thank you all for a great day. Let me close us in a brief word of prayer. Father, thank you for each and every one of those people listening in and joining us on this webinar. I pray that this time will at the very least be encouraging to folks, maybe even some practical insights into how to re-enter the community, the business world, whatever steps can be taken. Father, I'm especially encouraged to hear that in the midst of this social distancing and having to have meetings over Zoom or some other video media, that somehow we have grown to love each other more. There's something that's happened. I'm not sure I would have ever dreamed that these kinds of meetings would encourage vulnerability and transparency and compassion and empathy. But in your great providence, that has occurred. It certainly occurred at Missio, where my heart has been deeply encouraged by the spiritual mindfulness of our community. I pray that would be the case as well, and continue to be the case with all of our panelists, as well as those who are listening in from a distance. Father, these are troubled times. There are major crises at our doorstep. And I pray, Father, that we will be the people of God, that we will be wise in our businesses, but that we will also think about the people that work for us, the people who are our clients, and for society in general. There are deep, profound issues that have surfaced in the midst of this COVID crisis. Father, give us hearts that listen well. Give us ears to hear and eyes to see, that we might be faithful to you in how we live out our faith. May your blessing now be upon all of those who've participated today, and may they know the love of Christ. I pray in Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
Take care, everyone. God bless.
Amen. Thanks.